Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy that all of you are joining us today on our webinar Wednesday. Today's title is Using Data to Develop IET Programs. Our goal today is to assist you with resources and templates as you move your IET Programs of Studies forward. Today's discussion centers around the use of local and regional labor market data in conjunction with local workforce plans. I know that you're going to have many takeaways from this session that will help you as you move and implement your IET programs. Before we get started, I want to remind you of a few housekeeping rules. If you have a question, please type it into the Q&A section, and we will be monitoring those questions throughout the presentation. Your attendee microphones are muted, so you are in listen-only mode. Today's presentation, like all IPDAY webinar presentations, are recorded and they will be archived and available on the IPDAY website within 48 hours. Our facilitator today is Ronald Cruz from Caribe Refugee Program in Hillsborough County Public Schools. Ron, thank you so much for facilitating this webinar for us today. I'm going to turn it over to you to get started on the agenda and the work that we have set out for us this afternoon.
Thank you so much, June. Good afternoon, everyone. I really appreciate the time that you're spending this afternoon to learn a little bit more about how to really develop a program of study that's grounded in data, and what are the things in the data that you should be looking out for when planning or developing or even in tweaking your IET programs. So in this particular webinar, we're going to briefly just go over what IET is for those who are new and just starting off and getting their feet wet into the world of integrated education and training. So we're going to talk about that and go over how you can get more information if you need to from the Florida's IET guide. And after that, we're going to just dive directly into the data. We're looking at what data should we look at, what data types should we consider, and that are going to be critical and could be quite problematic if not looked upon at the developmental stages of your IET development. We're going to look at how can you address those needs with available resources that you have at your own disposal, and then at the end share with you a template that's going to summarize everything together so that you have somewhere like where you can put together your data and really help you in the design of your IET. Just keep in mind, we will have a brief Q&A session at the end and also an evaluation that you have to complete to help us in future webinars as we conduct them with Florida IPDAY. So what is IET? So for some of you that are quite new or just getting their feet wet in the world of integrated education and training, IET is simply a combination or integration of three major components. Those are adult education, which combines your literacy activities, workforce preparation activities, also known as employability skills, and then workforce training. So combining all these three components together, how does that look like in a classroom instruction? So when you're starting an IET, you need to make sure that what we expect of regular classroom instruction is also being satisfied in this type of model or service delivery. You must still have apply rigorous research-based instructional strategy, and you're still focusing on the same set of standards that you are focusing on in your regular adult education programs, such as reading, writing, math, English language arts, or English proficiency for adult ESOL programs. However, you are putting these standards within the context of workforce preparation and workforce training. Now, you must use occupationally relevantly instructional materials. Co-enrollment should occur simultaneously. And most importantly, you must have designed a single set of learning outcomes for your instructor and your students to follow and achieve on a day-to-day basis. So just to give you a little bit of a visual, so you have normally these two is already embedded in our current curriculum. So meaning we already teaching from our adult ESOL, GED prep, and adult ABE standards. We're combining that already with workforce preparation activities that are outlined in our curriculum frameworks. And some of those are critical thinking, digital literacy standards, self-management skills, and of course, the broader spectrum of employability skills in general. Now, what's the missing piece is that we will have to now provide the context, and the context of these two will play out in the workforce training. It could be a particular occupational training program, let's say automotive service technician, or medical assisting, or in the context of hospitality, such as culinary arts. It could be something that is on-the-job training. It could be embedded with the private sector or private sector hosted training programs. It could be as general as something that's entrepreneurial training as well. So there's many ways you can select what type of workforce training to integrate with. Now, it could be in any combination of these three major categories. So you could be combining ABE or even ESOL with a private sector training, or you can embed an entrepreneurial training with your GED prep classes, or you can do skill upgrading, retraining hosted by an employer and combine it with GED prep. But don't forget that you're also still integrating that third component, which is going to be critical to the implementation of IETs. Like, how does these skills play out in the workplace, which is really how are you going to use your basic skills in self-managing your task, or how does basic skills help in terms of applying it to the realm of digital literacy and things like that. So you're thinking about these three major components, but you're combining components of these into a single classroom instruction. So for more information about what IET is and what Florida's guidelines as to how to develop your own IET and how to submit, or how to what are the key components that you have to have in place in terms of an IET program, you can download the Florida Integrated Education and Training Guide directly from the DOE website, and that's fldoe.org. And you can just type search, use the search bar to look for integrated education and training, and you'll be able to access a plethora of materials and resources to guide you in developing your IET programs of study. What I'm going to focus on today is really how are you going to utilize data that you already have at your fingertips and use that to drive and narrow down into which programs you wanted to start. What types of IET trainings do you want to develop? So there are guiding questions, things that you need to consider in developing an IET. First is, what's the occupational skill? So again, are you going to focus on marketing? Are you going to focus on entrepreneurship? Are you going to focus on automobile? Are you going to focus on construction? Narrowing down that occupational skill is key. And what are those components that's going to help you get those? Are there jobs associated with that? So you can't just develop an IET. Let's say, oh, I'm going to go and do an IET with, let's say, cosmetology. But if there are not a significant projection of job openings in that area, then that might not be the perfect choice of occupational skills training for you. You need to identify who your students are and what their needs are. Are they lacking in basic skills? Are they lacking in English language? Do they already have high school diploma in their native country? So what are those things? You need to also understand the student part. In addition to that, we need to look at in the type of occupational skills course, is there going to be an associated certification for that training, and are those certifications employer recognized? Let's say if you're doing, let's say, Microsoft certification, is that something that is employer recognized, especially in local employers that you're targeting your students to be applying for? Are there any requirements on basic skills? Is there going to be, in order to start or exit the program, is there a specific threshold that they have to satisfy? So one, for example, is like most clock credit hour programs require at least a minimum of ninth grade level skills in reading, language, and mathematics in order to exit a particular occupational skills training program. Are there specific competencies that students need to demonstrate throughout the course? That this is very popular, especially in the healthcare field and also in the construction field, where there's going to be certain skills and performance-based activities that they have to complete. Are they going to have to come up with a portfolio at the end, or be able to demonstrate certain occupational specific skills in order to be licensed? And talking about license, is there a licensure exam? So is there a test that they're going to take, and what does that test look like? Is that test available in multiple languages, or are they all in English? So those are the things that you need to consider as well. On the students' side, you need to also think about what their needs are in terms of funding. How much are you going to charge for these courses, and are there going to be possible funding sources that you can tap on as students become interested in your IET program offering? On the instructional side, it's super important that you allow for collaboration between instructors, especially those two programs that they're co-enrolling with. So if you're an adult education teacher, it's going to require a little bit of flexibility and also logistical planning or strategizing in order to make sure that the instructor have the least amount, at least a good amount of time or an appropriate amount of time to plan together, so that the instruction that's happening in the CTE side and the adult education side remain aligned for the duration of the training. Next would be where are you going to get the students? How are you going to get them? How are you going to market the program, right? So starting a program is really good, but if you do not have a mechanism to drive and feed students into the program, that's also going to be challenging. So you need to also be thinking about this component as you move forward. Last but not the least, will they be able to complete it? So with the basic skill support that you're providing through your adult education program, and considering the exit requirements, would students in the target population that you're aiming for, would they be able to complete the course, in a timely fashion? All right, now we're going to talk about data as well. How are you going to use the data to identify which program you want to start? What type of area of focus, what career technical course do you want to develop an IET with? Okay, so there are a lot of choices. We have 17 different career clusters that you can choose from. And within each cluster are several occupational courses or programs that students can take or you can offer. So now we're going to start like, okay, well, now where do I begin? There's just so many, 17 plus so many. In addition to that, if you want to get a full list of career certificate programs that you're able to offer in the state, well, there is this link. There is this place in the Department of Education website where you can download all of the approved career certificate programs. It will lead you directly to the course, including the career curriculum frameworks for each individual program. If that's not sufficient, there's also an AS, AAS, and career certificate, and then training programs that is also available from the Department of Education website. So this is also an additional list, and this one is going to help you narrow down if you want it grouped according to a particular cluster. This might be the better area for you to start with in trying to narrow down your choice. Let's say you are in a rural area, or there's very limited industries to select from. So let's just say, well, there's only a select number of industries that are prominent in my area. Maybe you're in a highly agricultural area. So maybe narrowing down, going first with agriculture, food, and natural resource cluster, and then from there, looking at what are the available career credit clock hour programs that you can offer. Now, in order to, once you've selected the program, you need to identify, okay, well, how are you going to get your ducks in a row, right? But I'm not going to go there first, because let's settle back on looking at which program do I need, because you can't just look at it at a single lens. You have to look at it in a quadruple lens, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So when piecing together your IET and making that selection, and hitting that magic button, like okay, I got all my pieces in place, right? So there are three things that you need to consider. So there are four aspects in the data that you need to consider. First, you need to look at the labor market needs. And just like I mentioned earlier, look at the labor workforce in your area, look at the prominent industries in your area, because there's no point in moving into a career cluster when there is no employment or market needs for that in your region. Another thing is you need to look at your students. The demographics are your students. What is the vast majority of students in your program? Are they all language learners? Well, if they're language learners, what level of education have they completed in their native country? If they're basic skills learners, or if they are GED prep students, what level of achievement are they in? So that learning those needs and the different other needs of your students is really critical when putting together and making a decision as to what IET do you want to go. And we're really going to dive deep in all of these four components, but I just wanted to show you that you need to take a look at these two diagonal components, because these diagonal components are going to tell you the needs. Now, the opposite diagonal of the puzzle is your resources. And this is how you're going to how you are going to augment the needs with your resources. Well, your program resources is going to be definitely your go-to resources to address this. So if there is a need in automotive, do we have an automotive program? Do we have a shop? Do we have things like that that's available to launch a successful IET program? So all of those program resources you need to get in place. And in addition to that, you need to also rely and partner with your regional assets, or think about who are your regional assets and who are the partners in developing and implementing and making sure that your IET programs are successful. So let's look at each individual one in greater depth, so we can see exactly what I'm referring to in all of the four pieces of the puzzle of data that you need to consider in terms of IET. First of all, labor market needs. So where do we get this info? How do I know what are the available jobs out there? What is the projection of jobs out there? Well, there's There is a website. We have our own website. Florida Department of Economic Opportunity publishes all of the WIOA local workforce development plans for each individual workforce regions. So in Florida, I think we got 24. Yeah, I think we have 24 different regions. And if you go to this website, the link is provided on this slide. You go to this website, you can narrow down to your specific county and select the region that pertains to your county. And then you will be able to see research that's been done by your local workforce board in terms of available employment, current needs in your area, and also projected employment in the future if certain jobs are projected to grow or shrink over time. So here's an example of a data that you'll be able to gather by going into the Florida Department of Education, Florida Department of Economic Opportunity website and downloading your own local WIOA plan. So here's an example in Hillsborough, which plots out the largest industries in the area. So, and again, just imagine you're looking at your own region. Yours might be different in configuration based on your geography, the demographics in your region, and available resources in the region, and industries that are there, actually. So in here, we can see that healthcare and government is usually at the top of the spectrum. So that would be a really good indicator for me that if I started thinking about healthcare and different career clock programs, credit programs in healthcare, that would be a sure hit because that is one of the two largest industries in my area. So I really urge you to take a look at your local workforce development plan. Another piece of information that you can see in your local workforce development plan is the largest occupation. So this one is a little bit more specific. So now previously it's a little bit more clustered. Now this one is a little bit more specific in terms of, so what I see here is that Hillsborough's largest occupations fall under office and administrative support. So maybe creating an IET program, training programs that lead to these employment or jobs will really be a real hit. And as you can see, you can also see markers in the chart where what the national average are. So what we can see is our employment projections in the field of office and administrative support surpasses the national average in terms of need. And so therefore, I'm not only helping my students train for jobs within my area, but I'm also helping my students train for jobs for the same jobs that are going to be available everywhere in the United States. So just take a look and you can see as you go down the line or as you go down the graph, the probability of the success of your IET program decreases because the number of occupations or job openings available for that particular training program decreases. So you want to select the ones at the top end or the top half of your own local graphs on largest occupations. This is also going to show, this one narrows it down to the top growing industry. So this is also available in your own local WIOA plan, is what are the ones that are projected to explode or expand significantly over time. And as I can see here, I could really tell without even looking at this graph, I know construction is going to be a big hit. And especially with the approval of the infrastructure plan, federal infrastructure plan, construction is even going to boom even more because this graph was, this data was taken prior to the infrastructure plan approval. Finance and insurance, as you can also see, there's a huge need for accommodation and food services. Florida is a hospitality state. People go to us to have a vacation. We need people in the food service and accommodation industry because that's how we generate our state income that funds the all the operations of the state. So you can see here again, going down the line, what are the top growing industries over time. And as you hit the areas that are at the top end of this, is the higher likelihood of success. You want to hit the ones that are top because you want to make sure that there's going to be market for that. And you will also know how to market your IET programs to your students by telling them, hey, there's going to be a projection of this much percentage growth over the next 5 to 10 years. So that's going to be a really huge sell to all your students. Okay, so this one is also very similar. This one is now based on, I think, cluster. Let's look also at the national trend because, Florida might be different in certain aspects, but let's look at, because not all of our students are going to stay in our state forever. So we also want to give them a view and take a look at the view of the national and how we, us as a state, compares with the fastest growing occupations nationally. And if you look at that, there is like a wind turbine service technician is the top percentage projected. And there is also a projection post-pandemic. So there are two graphs. There's a graph to the left and then there's a graph to the right. Now, you're going to probably see that large green bar right towards the bottom half of the slide where you can see home health and personal care aides. So really the healthcare needs are going to be projected nationally to have the most number of occupation post-pandemic as projected. Now, I like this graph so much. I got this from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it shows how much also is the median annual wage as of May 2020 for these particular jobs. Solar, I know, is very booming in Florida. I've seen a lot pop, just drive up and down the I-75 and I-4 corridor. You see a lot of solar companies starting to set up shop. So solar is really going to be booming, especially in the Sunshine State. So that's another sure shot if you want to do an IET in that area. And the ones that are going to be your regular heavy hitters, such as IT, those are going to be super, super important. And of course, your medical careers are going to occupy the upper echelons of these growth occupations. Here's another national trend just for information purposes in terms of career cluster, and then they're separated into service provided or goods provided types of occupations and clusters. Shows and it compares it with agriculture versus non-agricultural wage, and how is the difference? What's the projected growth? This one is the projected rate of change in wages. So as you can see here, as I'm sure you've already seen in a lot of news or ads, available, that a lot of our leisure, our fast food industry are starting to raise their wages in order to attract employees, because they are really hurting for employees right now, post-pandemic. So this is the one that, based on data, shows the highest uptick in increased salary, and then followed by mining. And of course, healthcare is always going to be there. Educational services is also going up, especially with the new announcement from our governor trying to pump in some more money towards education. That's just going to further increase the percentage in wages in these particular types of fields or industries. And last but not the least, on the national trend is we're now here looking at the highest employment growth and then comparing it with pandemic recovery. So we want to factor in how much the pandemic will change or how much the pandemic did change the existing projections of jobs. So one of the things that I would say here is that personal care and service occupations, food preparation and service related occupations are the highest, have been propelled by the pandemic. Those are the two. And then the top three will be arts, design, entertainment, and supports media as we start reopening these jobs now that has been vacated by people that lost their jobs or either quit their jobs because of the pandemic are now going to start to reopen again. And there's going to be lots of vacancies in those areas in the near future, if not today. So it's really also good to know to look at the national trends. But the next thing you need to look at is what are employers looking out for? Because this is super important when you're building, especially your integrated education and training program of study and your single set of learning outcomes, is to take a look at what are the employers looking for in terms of skill sets. So now this is something that I saw online that are future-oriented skills 2022 and beyond. So this is really, they did a quick survey of major employers, major companies, and and I think this is from Indeed.com. They look at what are you looking for as an employer? What is key in the different types of jobs or positions that are available? What are, and these skills are transferable across clusters. So when you're developing your workplace preparation activities, you want to have this in guide and putting in and building this into the lesson, building this into the curriculum of your IET so that you're making sure that you are training the students for the jobs of tomorrow. Here are what I think is based on GMAC Corporate Recruiter Survey. So there's a GMAC, all of the recruiters for large corporations, they're looking at these skills that are going to be in demand in the next 5 years. And as you can see here at the top of the scale, they're looking for more management and innovation skill sets. Interpersonal skills is also at the top of the scale. Learning, motivation, and leadership is also another area. I also wanted to point out that generative thinking is also now being looked upon and is projected to grow over time. Now, as you go lower into the scale, you also see decline in demand. And as you can see, management and administrative activities are projected to decrease in demand in terms of that particular skill set over the next 5 years by a significant 35%. So that's something that teachers, program managers, and administrators need to know as you're building your IET together. So now that you've looked at your employer needs, you also need to look at the student needs, okay, or the employee needs. So the student needs, we always use our standardized assessment to assess language, basic skills, and high school equivalency skills using standardized assessments such as CASAS, GED, and TAPE. So we're using that. But on top of that, we also wanted to know what are they interested in taking? For a teacher, it's important for me to know, okay, what level of English is my student at? What's my reading level and my listening level? It would be nice to have a writing score or level as well. But on top of that, you also need to know what goal is your student trying to pursue. Well, one of the things, and I would recommend, how would I know what my students are other than just surveying? Hey, show of hands, how many students are interested in going into landscaping or interested in doing, let's say, veterinary medicine? But there is a science and research and also a tool mechanism that's going to help you really narrow down from skill set to level of interest, and those two match. So there's one that I would recommend is going to the Career OneStop website. The link is posted at the bottom of this slide. And this is a free assessment website. It's powered by ONET. So if you're using ONET, you can just continue using ONET. But I really like how they set it up on the Career OneStop. So all you got to do is send this student. I usually just copy the link and put it on a WhatsApp page, and I blast it out to my students and say, hey, welcome to my class. I want to learn a little bit more about you and what you're trying to pursue in my class before you actually come in. So I will send this out and I'll tell them, oh, it's a quick assessment, and all you got to do is click on areas that you're interested with. There is also a language translation. So if you don't speak English or you're teaching an ESOL class, you can convert the survey into Spanish, and the students can take the assessment in Spanish as well. So the assessment is very simple. You send them the link that's at the bottom of this page, and then the students land on this page, and then all they have to do is click on Start Assessment. The assessment looks like this. It's about, I think, 35 questions, if not 40, but it allows the student to gauge, how much they like a particular line of work or a particular type of activity. Let's say if you want to start your own business or operating a calculator or assembling, and this is my own answer, my own honest answer. So I like operating a calculator because I'm a math teacher. So that type of thing. So they answer these questions by simply clicking in on the check boxes, and then at the end, it's going to give them a RAISEC or RIASEC score. Okay, so that RIASEC score stands for realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. This RIASEC score is going to help you narrow down what is the best career for that student based on what they love to do. Okay, it's important to push the students toward a particular career that they enjoy doing, not just because there's a job available thereafter, but we want to make sure that they're going to be okay or at least happy with the job that we're preparing them for. It adds that layer of motivation to the students, and they get to learn, they get to do what they love, and at the same time make a living out of it. Now, if you want to learn more, you can narrow down. The student can print a full report that will identify each individual component of RIASEC and what about each component is, and what, based on a particular configuration of these components, there will be a specific set of jobs that would be best fit for that type of one. So after I see that, it's going to display a list of all matching careers based on my interest. So in this case, I have 179 careers matching my interest assessment. And again, the student can print this out or send a link to the teacher, download it, send a link to the teacher through an email so that the teacher can have somewhat of an idea of what careers they're interested in. So this is now narrows down the choices for the student, and finding an occupation match. So at least as you move forward, there's going to be some type of direction as to, okay, why are we contextualizing to this particular career? Is because there is a reason, there's some data matching that based on your career assessment. So once you click on each individual, the student can really click on one of the matching careers that say, okay, well, this one, first line supervisor of construction trades and extraction workers really appeals to me, sounds really nice. So they click on it and it displays the outlook for that job. Okay, so what do I need to know? How much do I get paid? What are the different career pathways in that area? It even gives me a brief career video of what it looks like. and other associated careers with that. Let's say, okay, that's not exactly where I want. Well, it'll give you a suggested other education experiences to get started in that career. It also gives you how much educational level our workers are in this field. So as I can see here, oh wow, it only requires majority of the workers in this field only requires a high school diploma or equivalent. So getting my GED in an IET program and training for building and construction trades would really get me a job, a high possibility of landing a job. You can also look at what other types of certifications, what licensing is required to be able to work in that field in the state of Florida. So those are all available for the students to take a look at, and so much more. So it's just a lot of information for students. So this is not something that I would suggest doing in a one sitting. I usually do this in multiple stages. We look at different parts over time, and so that the students really understand and can make an informed decision as to what career they wanted to pursue moving forward. So I'm going to pause right here, June, see if we have any questions that that I'm not able to address at this time.
No, keep going. You're doing great. There are no questions that haven't been addressed.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. All right. Moving forward, what we're going to cover now is the next set of needs, the needs of your students. So their academic needs, we already covered the academic needs, which is really being assessed by our standardized pre-testing data, which is TABE, CASAS, GED, that type of thing, or GED ready. Now we also just finished discussing about interest and career goals. Now we also wanted to address what might be a challenge for the student in participating in an IET program. So this one has been published by World Ed, by their Clio research team, and they grouped the barriers to learning into 3 major categories. First is dispositional, followed by situational, and then the third is institutional. So let's talk about each one of the barriers in learning, what those types are, and some examples of those barriers so that we know, okay, these are things that I also need to be able to provide the students that are going to enter my IET program so that they don't drop in the middle of the program or withdraw because of these barriers. So first is the institutional barrier. So the institutional barrier is a result of an educational or an employment policy or practice which prevents students from participation. Certain companies do not support training or professional development or just growing capacity. So there are going to be some companies and employers like that. So lack of support is there. And lack of support not only pertains to the employer, it could also pertain to family members. It could also pertain to the local government. So there's not a lot of support or drive for the local government to drive people or underprivileged people to employment. Another one is the cost of education. That's another thing that's really a biggie, because offering and career technical programs could be quite pricey. So for adult ed, we charge what? Less than $50 to participate in adult ed. But when you participate in a technical program, you're looking at upwards of $2,000 to $3,000 for a particular program, between 300 to 400 hours of training. So look into that and like, well, none of our students can come off with that amount of money. So cost of education becomes a critical factor and a barrier to participation. That's why you need to get your partners involved so that you can have some reliance on, okay, who are my possible partners that could help fund the tuition of these students who are entering the IET program. Another one is a situational barrier. So this is a second category. And so the situational barriers are barriers that arise as they balance life and work and school and their own health. So these are the types of things such as transportation. Do you have a reliable mass transit system that adult students can access to get to your technical program or even your adult education program? So you need to be able to be ready and or seek partners who's going to be able to provide transportation assistance. Same as true with childcare. That's always a big barrier, especially for families with younger children that they cannot leave at home. Usually they would be happy to, usually they will have some, if they can afford it, maybe do daycare during the day or do affordable or subsidized childcare during the day, but they won't extend that towards the nighttime and cough up an extra $250 a week to pay for childcare in the evening so that you can go to school. So nobody has that. So you need to think about how are you going to schedule your programs in such a way that you can address the childcare needs. English language and literacy is also another challenge. So looking into, okay, is my population, what level of English are they? Are they all coming from zero English, or do they all have some level of literacy coming in? Because that's going to factor in as to when do you want to start your IET program, or how do you get enough students ready to enter a technical program. And this is a biggie. The last one's digital inequity, especially during the pandemic. We've seen a lot of our students drop off because they do not have either access to a technology device or access to the internet. So, and also if they did have access to both, the next challenge is, do they have tech savviness or digital know-how in order to navigate our educational platforms online? So that's another barrier that is also situational for our students. And last but not the least is the dispositional barrier. This is really referring on the individual motivation and confidence of the students, because sometimes they have a disconnect between what they think they can do and what actually they can do. And that's really what's unlocked when they participate in an adult education program, is you as a teacher allows the student to really realize their true potential as to what skills and capabilities are they going to be able to accomplish, and open up those career options for your students. So really important barriers to participation that you need to consider in the data. And then last but not least, you want to think about the resources. What are your resources? So it's pointless to start a nursing assistant program if you don't have a medical lab in your school. So you need to align the resources that you have to the IET program that you're trying to plan for. Resources does not only refer to physical equipment and laboratories or space and facilities. They also refer to human resources. Do you have a certified technician that will be able to, based on state standards, be able to instruct students in a particular career? So those are very important areas that you need to consider. And again, facilities and equipment. Some career technical programs could be very costly. So having like what Lorenzo Walker Technical College, this is the example that I have, just grabbed this from their website, having a fully functioning, fully equipped, plenty of cars to work with, automotive service technician lab is quite expensive. So what are your options if you are a smaller district or your district or school that have very limited resources, but still wanted to venture into IET? That's when you start tapping on employers, looking into employer partners, because they already have training programs, training facilities, and even actual facilities for you to embrace and start wrapping an IET program around. Another thing is to think about is the instructional resources. Are there books, resources, pamphlets, computer programs, that are going to be used by your instructors in these IET programs. Do you have, you can't have an IET program on IT if you don't have computers or computer labs or a computer program where your students are going to need to have to manipulate or develop code if you don't have specific programs. So those are also additional costs that you need to think about when developing an IET program. On the teacher side, you also need to think about what resources in terms of instruction you need to collate, procure, or even develop. So these are just some sample of contextualized or occupationally relevant materials that you can use in various IET programs. And last but not the least is your partner. So who can best help you in this are all of your regional assets. It pays well to know your neighbors and to work well with your neighbors. So looking at what are the regional assets that are available to me, looking at those assets as the key addressers of your needs. Let them provide the needs. Let's say, for example, strike an MOU with CareerSource and say, hey, can we help? We are going to start this IET program. Could you support our students interested in this program by providing tuition or financial aid or financial assistance for the training programs for the students? One of the things that I considered looking at before going into our CareerSource board or local workforce board is to know if my IET aligns with their targeted sector. Every CareerSource area or every local workforce board have a what they so-called targeted sector. These are the sectors that are prioritized under their grants or under their projects or programs that are going to be that's outlined in their plan. So if you're aligning to these targeted sectors, that increases the likelihood that these local workforce boards are going to be able to provide tuition, training, and all workforce preparation assistance for the IET program that you're trying to develop. Other regional partners are the partners that you already currently are working with. Just keep in mind that these people also need your help. So why not work together towards the same purpose? Your local community development center is also a good source to take a look at because every city has one and they already have existing training programs that you can wrap adult education around and build IET programs with. Another example would be Habitat for Humanity. They're already building houses. So why not wrap their construction training program with an adult education program, maybe a GED prep or English language, depending on the demographics of students. Feeding America is very popular because they have what they call Fresh Force program that already provides training for Class B truck driving, warehouse logistics, and culinary arts. And they also hire from within. So Feeding America is not just a local nonprofit organization. They're a local employer. So it serves as two folds. So, knock on the door of your local Feeding America branch or chapter and see if you can explore some. And these are just some examples. There's a lot, and it's also going to be very different as you go to different parts of the state. So let's bring it all together. All right. So you've got your first two diagonal, which is your needs, labor market needs, and your student needs. And the key to putting your data together when you develop your IET program of study is to align those needs with the current resources that you have and the regional assets and partners that you can rely on in pushing and implementing the program. So keeping this visual all together in your mind is going to help you conceptualize a really solid, powerful, and in-demand, really relevant IET program for the adult learners in your area. we have put together for you a template where you can piece all of this information together as you're doing your research, as you're diving deep into your local workforce data, as you're diving deep into a particular career technical training. You want a place to put them in and to organize them so that you can look at all of these pieces of information in one place. Well, there is an available examining the targeted course that is included in your workbook that's downloadable from the webinar page that's going to help you, put this all together. It's an editable version where you can type directly in and then start typing the pieces of information that you've gathered from your resource. Now, if that's not enough, we also wanted to tell you that Florida IP Day is hosting several regional workshops in person and virtually on December 2nd. Training for educators, training for adult educators on how to really instruct students in your IET program. So if you have IET programs, both CTE teachers and adult education teachers need to be attending these workshops, and it's not too late. It's only November 17th. So we have one next coming up, and we're heading over down to the deep south of Miami-Dade College, and we are hosting a regional workshop there. The workshop is entitled Engaging Adult Education Through IET-Centered Instruction, and that's happening right on this Friday, right when we go on break. Now, if you guys are unavailable to travel or have limited funds to send people to travel locally or across the state, then we have a virtual session on December 2nd. Just make sure you register through the IP Day website by going into the event calendar tab. And as you click on the event calendar tab, it'll show all of the available trainings within that month. And you can scroll to different months because as you can see, it displays by month. But in this case, if you display the November calendar, it'll show you the next one, and actually the last one we're doing in November because we're approaching Thanksgiving holiday. So this one, make sure you click register. And if you want more details, you want to print the agenda and see where exactly in Miami-Dade are we hosting this workshop, then click on more details. It'll display the details and how to contact the event host through email. Now, if you do not have an IP Day portal account, you may have to create an IP Day portal account by providing your name and just basic information such as email address. And we really do suggest you use your school email so that it's not difficult for you to relocate your IP Day portal account if needed. We have our technology and support specialist, Tammy Serrano, that's always on standby to make sure that your IP Day portal accounts are active and on point. And if you lose access to your IP Day account, feel free to always contact Florida IP Day, and our team would be happy to help. Now, at this point, are there any other questions, June, that
there is, Ron. There is
Okay,
a
go ahead.
question about the government jobs and projections that you had talked about. So the
Okay.
question is, how will I find out about government jobs and projections? Where do they go? On the WIOA website?
Yeah, so there's multiple places. Now, my go-to website is the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. And the same website that I displayed to you earlier, if you click on the government, on that exact wording that, government jobs, click on that, it will lead you directly to the list of occupations within that particular category. So everything is there. I'm not leading you to nowhere. So when you go to that Florida Bureau of US Labor, US, I'm combining Florida and the US. So Bureau of Labor Statistics, all of the information is there. You can even narrow down through the tabs. There's also a tab for government jobs. And but again, like be cognizant that government jobs there are national in nature, and it might not be the same jobs available in your local area.
Thank you so much, Ron. Before you leave us today, you're going to see a pop-up happen on your screen right now, which is some feedback. Just take a few seconds really to answer these 3 short questions. Your feedback is very important to us, so we would like for you to take the time to answer these 3 short questions. As you do that, I just want to remind you that next Wednesday, December 1st, we are really going to dive into more data. And this is going to be a data for the people. So you really don't want to miss out on this. This is going to be lots of reports that will be discussed to assist you in really making some good data decisions going forward. So we hope that all of you can join us next Wednesday. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you, Ron. This was fantastic.
Thank you so much, everybody. And I'll see you on our next webinar.